And also, a lot of people have been getting upset at Capcom for another Mega Man announcement. It's called Mega Man X-Over. It is for the iPhone's operating system. It's going to be an iPhone-exclusive game. iPhone, iPad, those systems.
Yeah, I remember seeing a trailer for that.
It didn't really look that bad, but at the same time, it didn't look impressive either.
Well, from what I could tell of it, they used the touchscreen to jump and shoot, didn't they?
Yes, but there was no indication on the actual screen as to how you move. So a lot of people are speculating that it's an on-rails game. You don't actually control your character as far as left and right, up and down. All that is supposed to, they're estimating is going to be handled for you.
That does sound pretty troubling.
Yeah, it's not going to be a Mega Man game in anything but, I wouldn't even say spirit, maybe just looks.
Even if that is the case, the iPhone is not exactly a platform for, platformer.
That's very true. I actually did buy the Mega Man X iPhone game, and it is Mega Man X. You know, the updated graphics are nice, but at the same time, you lose a little bit of control. I can get through most areas of the game without getting hit, and this one I have to take the hits because I can't avoid them.
Just plow through certain areas?
Yeah.
Play like a speedrunner. Take the hits to get through an area faster.
Do a speed run without getting hit, and I'll be more impressed.
Especially on a system like that.
Yes.
And that has been a lot of segues into our main topic now, because that technically might fit into the casual gaming market. So, if you can't already tell, today's major topic is hardcore versus casual, or as I've heard some people call it, softcore. So, where do we even begin with this?
Well, we mentioned it a little bit in last week's episode. We just kind of touched on it and then said, we'll come back to it. So, one of the reasons that we decided to go ahead and go with this one, I think the best place to start would be games like Bejeweled.
And I think you have a major point there, because it's games like Bejeweled, and a lot of the PopCap games that came along during that era, that kind of created the casual gaming market. Which is kind of wrong, because casual gaming has been around since pretty much the beginning of games. It just really depends on what your definition of casual gaming is.
I can remember on the regular Nintendo a few games that could have fallen easily into the casual gaming niche.
Well, you've got all of those games that are based on popular quiz shows and game shows. You've got a ton of puzzle games, not the least of which Tetris is probably the most classic casual game there is. But at the same time, can you call a game like Tetris casual? Because on some of those harder levels, it's every bit as difficult as any game today.
And that is the overriding topic for today's episode, is that I don't think the term casual is very fair on several fronts. How do you feel about the that term being used in gaming?
Well, for me personally, casual gamers are more of the people that just enjoy playing a game. They don't have to beat it. They don't have to collect everything. They just want to get in, have a nice experience, and it doesn't really matter what kind of game it is. Now, some people may make fun of them if they're in a, quote, hardcore game, playing it casually. But I think a lot of what's being labeled as a casual game these days has been taken through more of a social gaming network, which is definitely where those Zynga games come into, and a lot of the Connect, Move, Wii type stuff.
Well, my main point for the whole conversation would be that I don't really necessarily agree that there is such thing as a casual game. I think you can play games casually. Mm-hmm. I don't think you have to become obsessed with them and stay up all night, trying to get to the next level, trying to beat the game when it first comes out so you can enjoy the rest of your time off from games. It depends on how you play it. I don't think a game being designed a specific way actually makes the game casual. Because I know there are a fair amount of people who have wasted more time in Farmville than I ever have in World of Warcraft.
And it does. It comes a lot down to the player, not the game. Because hardcore, to me, is more of the mentality. It's the completionists. It's the people who want to unlock everything, that want to collect everything, that put all of those long hours in, try to get all of the achievements, and ultimately they play to win. Seriously. And that's why a lot of games that are considered hardcore end up having tournaments based off of.
Most tournaments are for real-time strategy games and fighting games, though. You don't really see too many tournaments for other games. There's no Gears of War tournaments that I can recall. There's a few first-person shooter tournaments for like I would have said Medal of Honor, but that one's not really in play as far as I know right now.
Well, Quake,
Gears of War,
Quake actually
Doom.
has, of course, the Quake Con, but
Mhm.
as far as a tournament level, I haven't seen a whole lot besides a few Call of Duty and once upon a time a bunch of Counter-Strike and quite a few Halos still. At the same time, most first-person shooters are considered part of that hardcore market.
Yes, and if you join a game trying to play multiplayer, and anybody who's played a game like Tribes Ascend or any version of such a game, Team Fortress even, will tell you that your teammates will be just as quick to turn on you as your enemies if you do something that they don't like.
Oh, yes.
If you fail to capture a base point, or if you get killed instead of killing your teammate or your opponent, your teammates will deride you pretty heavily.
Because aside from big multiplayer first-person shooters like that, you've also got the fighting game community, who are infamous for trash talking. You've got the WoW community, who is a little bit of everybody, because you've got the casuals, you've got the hardcore. You even have a lot of tournaments actually playing through the game through a lot of the in-game arenas.
They have arena tournaments every year that they have BlizzCon. And even this year, there was no BlizzCon, and I believe they still had some sort of arena tournament at another convention. I think was it at Gamescom?
Very possible.
I think so.
And of course, you can't mention this list without mentioning StarCraft at some point.
Oh,
yes, it is. It is largely a Korean fan base, but it's still huge everywhere. There's a big U.S., well, at least North American, and there's a very big European crowd. So StarCraft is one of those international kind of recognized games, especially for the really hardcore about strategy, real time or otherwise. And then you have what would you call that? The adopted black sheep. That is probably considered the most hardcore of hardcore games or genres, really. And that's the MOBA. League of Legends, Dota, all of those games, those are probably the biggest hardcore communities. Because it's almost impossible to play those games casually.
I have League of Legends. I'm not particularly good at the game, so it's very difficult for me to get into the game and enjoy it because, like I mentioned earlier, you get made fun of, derided on, and you just don't want to play the game. I mean, when your teammates are more concerned with making fun of you for doing something stupid than they are taking care of themselves and making sure they don't die, it starts to take a lot of the fun out of gaming.
I certainly don't have anything against the game, and even a lot of the people that I know play it. So when I say this, I don't mean to offend anybody, but League of Legends has probably arguably the worst gaming community out there.
Undeniably.
There is a lot of bad eggs. There's a lot of good eggs, don't get me wrong. It really seems to be leaning more toward one direction than the other, and it's almost understandable because people take it so seriously. And when you have to rely so much on winning your game on your teammates, that when your teammates make a mistake you can't fix, you're going to get angry.
And it's especially bad in rated games because losing a game affects your rating negatively just as much as winning a game affects it positively. The only thing is that you can't win a game on your own. You have to play as a team. So it's at that point in the game, it's actually best to find like-minded friends that maybe you've met in the game or friends that you have that you know in real life that will, play the game with you at the same level that you can. It's just not worth going in and trying to get the game match made for you because you're just going to end up raging or getting raged at.
I think that's a large reason of why clans came in the beginning in the first place, is that steady online presence of people that you could lean on and trust when you needed it.
And it's been helpful to a lot of games to keep them not only, people playing them, but keep those games actually alive through those people.
So we've talked a little bit about the more hardcore aspects of games, and then there's the casual. We already kind of briefly mentioned Bejeweled and Tetris, and you've got other games that I don't know if anybody remembers Ascent Aquarium, but that was kind of a big deal back in the early 2000s. And probably one of the more famous, more recent ones is Plants vs. Zombies.
I actually have Plants vs. Zombies. I like that game a lot.
Oh, and the current Ultimate King, how could I forget? Angry Birds. Everybody has Angry Birds.
I actually bought Angry Birds Space the day it came out, so...
But see, you can have a lot of fun with a casual game. You don't have to treat it as if it's some sort of kindergartner version of what games you're supposed to be playing, that there's somehow out of a age range that people in a certain age bracket shouldn't be playing these games, otherwise they're considered wusses. I don't understand that kind of mentality.
It's like watching My Little Pony because, nobody should watch My Little Pony once they're not 15 and a girl. Oh, that's terrible.
There's just room for things like this, especially in today's age.
Oh, yes.
And yet at the same time we know it's successful because the Wii owes much of its success off the casual game market. Matter of fact, there's a lot of people angry about that fact, that people are blaming Wii for killing the hardcore games. Personally, I don't see it. I see a lot of hardcore, and yes, I'm using a lot of air quotes here, you just can't see me. A lot of the hardcore games that we know of today seem to be getting simplified. We just talked a little bit about Diablo 3 last time, and that's kind of what happened to it. And there's a bunch of other games that we could add to that list too.
Even World of Warcraft has gone through its fair share of simplification in the game. It's not so much to make it easier, it's to make it more massively appealing, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I haven't gotten upset with very many of the changes to World of Warcraft over the years. There were some things that I didn't like, and there were some things added that I really liked, so change is good, but not too much.
There has to be a balance.
Right.
You have to keep your challenge, and you have to keep your accessibility. And I think that's the real key word here. People are trying to make their games accessible, and yet still deep enough that people can get a lot of hours of play out of it, because nobody wants their game to be beaten in 30 minutes and then tossed away. Even the ones who are specifically making their games for basically that fact.
No, usually when a game is going to be that short, they'll come up with some way to keep you playing.
Sometimes it's a DLC trick, or you get extra levels, or a new character, or something along those lines, but we aren't touching the DLC conversation this time out. But really, the Wii wasn't the first one to go into that whole direction that now the Kinect and Move obviously tried to copy. It goes even further back than the iToy, which was, of course, the less than successful PS2 version of all of this stuff. There's just, I don't know, I think there's this new range of interactivity that people are trying to find that goes back even as far as the U-Force and the Power Glove in the days of the NES.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
They're just trying to find ways of getting the controllers out of people's hands and more into the game itself. And whether it's about immersion or not, I'm not totally sure. Sometimes it's just a gimmick. I think that's really what the developers are looking for. They're looking for that next big thing.
And sometimes that next big thing takes a while to make. And a lot of people aren't willing to pick it up, especially if it's something that's new. That's why you see a lot of rehashed titles, a lot of sequels instead of new content, new IPs. You don't see very many of them.
I've actually been surprised about how many of them I have been seeing. But even then, a lot of those fresh new IPs are getting their sequel after sequel pumped out of them.
Exactly.
I think I can point to Assassin's Creed specifically for that one, considering they're up to 5, 6 now, in a period of about 3.5, 4 years.
Well, a lot of people don't consider the last 2 or 3 games that were released as actual important or main parts of the franchise. They believe that Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed 2, and then you can just skip the others and go to Assassin's Creed 3. But that confuses me, because didn't they tie up a lot of the loose ends in the story in Assassin's Creed Revelations?
As I understand it, yes.
See, that whole mindset confuses me then. So I don't understand how that couldn't be an integral part of the Assassin's Creed, we'll say, experience.
Well, sometimes the side stories are just as important. I mean, maybe this is absolutely the wrong direction to go, but you have the controversial Grand Theft Auto series that had Vice City and San Andreas. It didn't have a number in the title. It's not an official sequel. But who in their right mind would consider them not a part of the main franchise?
Vice City was probably my favorite, and I didn't really like the story missions in the game because they involved too much of the game that I didn't find enjoyable. I didn't like the foot sequences, the shooting, the targeting, that stuff was just terrible. But I liked driving around. And that was me casually playing a game that a lot of people played hardcore. All works into the topic.